Hello and welcome to another episode of Full Court Finance here at Zach's. I'm your host, Ben Rains. In this week, we're going to be doing a little deep dive into ESPN after Disney's Q3 earnings report came out last week. But before we get into any of that, I just want to have a quick reminder that if you have any episode suggestions or questions, please feel free to shoot us an email over at podcast@zax.com because we always appreciate any feedback whatsoever. And now let's get right into it. So before we do ESPN stuff, I want to do a quick Disney overview because obviously they own ESPN and it's all intertwined. So it is very important to know what's going on at Disney because that also is going to kind of show you what Disney has to do with ESPN and what capabilities ESPN has of growing by just how much money Disney has. So as most people might have heard by now, Disney's proposed roughly $71 billion purchase of key 21st Century Fox assets has already been approved by shareholders of both companies and the U.S. Justice Department authorities. That was a tongue twister for me. I'm not sure why, but it still needs a few international approvals before it is official. So a little bit more about that deal. It would see Disney grab Fox's TV and movie studios, which would then see them own some big franchises such as Avatar, The Simpsons, X-Men, a few more big names, and then also FX, National Geographic, as well as some satellite TV providers such as Star India, which is a big deal, and then Sky PLC, even though there's kind of some stuff going on there with whether Fox or Comcast is going to bid more for total ownership of Sky. So we'll have to see what goes on with that over the next couple months. And then also Disney gets a controlling stake in Hulu. And the basic idea here is that they want all of this because Disney's trying to make a streaming TV push. Their streaming app or platform is set to come out in late 2019. That's pretty much what most of Disney's earnings call centered around. It's what CEO Bob Iger talked about the most. And the idea is that they want to compete against or with Netflix, Amazon, soon enough Apple's getting into streaming TV as well. So that's why they want all these Fox assets, because they want to have some offerings that are big brand names that they can have on this platform. Because what Disney talked about on the call a lot was that they're not going to have as many titles and as many shows and movies because they're not aggregating from other companies on their platform like Netflix does, but they're going to be able to offer Star Wars original shows, Avengers original shows, Pixar original television shows. So it's going to be the brand names that more people care about than some random Netflix show that there's no cachet to it. What is interesting, though, is that since Disney didn't have this plan for that long, only the last couple of years, that a lot of their rights are still their distribution rights for post theater releases are owned by some other companies. So it's not like when you buy Disney's new streaming platform in late 2019, you were going to get every single Star Wars movie and every single thing like right away, because some of that's still tied up. So going forward from 2019 onward, all the new Pixar, Avengers, Star Wars movies that Disney and Lucasfilms and Marvel makes, which Disney owns all of them, are going to be available, but they kind of didn't have the foresight to not sell some of these rights, which actually a lot of this stuff is currently on Netflix. You can watch some of the new Star Wars movies and the Marvel movies on Netflix as well. But those are going to disappear, hopefully for Disney, relatively soon. They're actively negotiating to get a lot of this back from some places. But I don't want to go on too much more about Disney, aside from saying that their overall revenues climbed 7% to about $15.23 billion. Earnings are up 18%, and Their studio entertainment division was up 20% to $2.88 billion, and that was driven by huge box office numbers there was a little carryover from Black Panther, which came out in the first quarter of 2018, even though Disney's reporting a little differently. On top of Avengers Infinity War and Incredibles 2. And then their Parks and Resorts division climbed 6% to about $5.2 billion. But by far their most important division still is the media networks, which ESPN is a part of. That climbed by about 5% to $6.2 billion. And then it was up about 3% for the first 9 months of their fiscal year to $18.4 billion. So it wasn't all bad for this division. It's up 5%, but their operating income slipped about 1%. And that's not great. We'll get into why that happened. And then for cable networks specifically, which is what ESPN is a part of, their revenues climbed 2% for the quarter to about $4.2 billion, and then 3% for the first 9 months. So the big hit for the operating income for the quarter was that BAM Tech reported a big loss, and that is BAM Tech is a company that ESPN slowly acquired over the last couple of years. It's a streaming company that does streaming services for HBO and some other companies. It actually started as a division of Major League Baseball, oddly enough. And so that company is helping Disney roll out its streaming platform in late 2019, and it was the company that helped them launch ESPN Plus. So that's where the big hit came from in operating income this quarter. But what is good for ESPN is that some of the declines in the media networks division were offset by increases at ESPN. But most of this comes from one very specific area where the rest of ESPN's business, as a lot of people, especially sports fans, have heard by now, there's a big decline at ESPN. But ESPN is still doing relatively well because their affiliate revenue keeps climbing. And obviously they've been hurt by cord cutters, but the cable companies are still paying a lot of money for ESPN to appear on their cable packages. And I want to do a little bit more of a breakdown of what's going on and what some of those numbers mean, because it is really, you just hear, oh, ESPN's just losing subscribers by the millions. They are, but it's a little more complicated than that. So ESPN peaked at just over 100 million subscribers in 2011, and they have lost about 13 million subscribers since then. The last reported figures, because ESPN's not reporting these themselves, the last reported estimates were done earlier this year by Nielsen. So they said that ESPN was at around 86 million subscribers. But since 2011, even though they've lost 13 million subscribers, the affiliate fees that ESPN is charging have gone up 54%. So while they're losing all these subscribers, the people that are staying with cable value ESPN a lot. They want to watch live sports. That's why people who are hanging on the cable networks see, or the cable companies who sell people cable packages see ESPN as a very valuable asset. And they have by far the highest affiliate fees. At the last reported figure was $7.20 per month is going to just ESPN. And so that's not even like the whole ESPN family of networks. That's just ESPN's main network. And for reference, Fox Sports, so FS1, FS2, Big Ten Network, they were the next most expensive, and customers were paying about $1.86 per month. So ESPN at about $7.20, And that was before they went up this past quarter, and Fox was at $1.86 as the second highest, Fox Sports. So the premise here is that for a long time, people just had cable. They watched they watched not all of the channels that they were getting. And that is why people are cutting the cord, because they were getting 50, 60, 100 channels, maybe 90% of them they never watched at all. So ESPN was making money off of that, because if you had a cable package, you likely had ESPN on that cable package, even if you didn't watch it. So over the last 6 or 7 years, they've lost 13 million subscribers, but that didn't mean that at the time all of those people were watching ESPN. It was just that they had cable. But in general, now just less people have cable. They're cutting the cord and they're going to these more a la carte options, which is so they don't have 50 channels they never watch at all. Because if you flip through cable, if you still have cable and you're watching at home, just look through some of the channels that you probably have never turned on. It's mind-blowing. It really is. But I want to do a little bit more on the bad things that are happening at ESPN. So the programming costs went up this past quarter and advertising revenues dipped. So the combination, not a good thing at all. The higher programming costs came pretty much all from contractual rate increases for their NBA programming. And this is only going to go up because ESPN is pretty much in the middle of its ESPN and Turner's 9-year, $24 billion television deal to broadcast NBA games, and that runs through the 24-25 season. So those rates are going to keep going up, and they're not going to be able to get out of that contract most likely. I don't think they want to, since the NBA is actually their ratings went up last season while the NFL's ratings were going down. So ESPN will likely continue, even after this contract is up, to be in the business of the NBA in some aspect. And then advertising revenue dipped because advertising impressions were down, which means less people were watching in general. And that obviously led to lower overall ad revenue. And then Disney also cited that this was also partially due because there was one less NBA Finals game than the year ago quarter, and those ad rates for big time primetime NBA Finals games get a lot of money. So you're going to see a couple $1 million or even more swing from that. And the problem here, though, and so at ESPN specifically, this was media networks in general, but ESPN specifically, their ad revenue was down 3% for the quarter. And the problem is that these trends really aren't going to reverse, but they also have to realize that advertisers are going to have to understand that if people are just leaving cable, that you're going to have to try to reach these people somewhere. And people are leaving cable most often for things like Netflix or Amazon Prime, which are not ad supported. So you can't then just say, well, we're not going to advertise on TV because less people are watching. But if you can't get them on Netflix or Amazon, what do you do? So that's also part of the reason why Facebook and Google make so much money, is because that's where advertisers spend a majority of their money. But yeah, things are getting a little, not desperate, but ESPN's trying to do a lot. They had a really gimmicky thing on August 8th. They ran 24 hours on ESPN2 where they turned it into ESPN The Ocho, which is a joke from a Vince Vaughn movie in Ben Stiller. So that they're really doing some gimmicky stuff to try to get people watching, where they played like cornhole, and they also ran the movie Dodgeball twice on ESPN. That's very interesting. They're cutting a lot of programming, canceling shows, changing up the lineup seemingly every 2 months, just trying to see if anything sticks. And this brings me to what they are doing and what eventually is going to become not only Disney's big push on streaming, but ESPN's big streaming push. And I've talked about it before on the show, and that is ESPN Plus. And Bob Iger talked about that a lot on the quarterly earnings call and what they're doing with that going forward. And I just kind of want to lay out why. Obviously, it's not the best offering at this moment, but going forward, I see ESPN Plus getting even better, especially for a younger millennial sports fan. And then down the road, maybe when 10 years from now, they can just offer an actual standalone ESPN streaming platform. Because the reason why they can't do that now is because all of their contracts with the NFL and college football and basketball and the NBA is based on it being on television. So they can't just put all of this on streaming because they're not allowed to. So right now, ESPN launched ESPN Plus in April at a $4.99 per month price point. And I just want to stress that this is different than Watch ESPN, which has been a streaming version of actual ESPN for some time now, but you need a cable subscription to watch that. So you'd have to sign in through your Comcast or AT&T or whatever cable subscription, whereas ESPN Plus is completely on its own. You don't need any affiliation with paying for actual ESPN. But as I said, ESPN Plus, there's no Monday Night Football, there's no NBA basketball, there's no big primetime college football or college basketball, because that is the lifeblood of actual ESPN and ESPN2. So what you do get is some live Major League Baseball games, but not the big games, some NHL games, which is actually new for ESPN, PGA Tour events, some PGA Tour events, not big ones, some boxing events, some Grand Slam tennis, and then some secondary college sports like lacrosse and softball and volleyball and random stuff like that. And when I say secondary, sure, they're fun, but they don't have that big of an audience, because my producer Danny was kind of shaking his head at me when I said lacrosse. I think that's what, he played lacrosse in high school, and he didn't take too kindly to that. But there's also some cricket and rugby. And then ESPN has also spent heavily recently on landing a big UFC deal to try to get more people to sign up for ESPN Plus. And then on the third quarter conference call, there was a pretty big announcement. And this is what I spoke to a little bit before about that this app for now is going to be geared towards a younger sports fan, because they just landed a pretty big soccer deal. So Disney announced that they landed the exclusive U.S. rights for Serie A, which is Italy's top flight soccer league. It's part of what is widely considered Europe's top 5 leagues, along with England, Germany, Spain, and France. So there's 5 big international. Those are the 5 biggest leagues in the world. And ESPN Plus and ESPN landed the exclusive U.S. rights. So ESPN Plus will carry an average of 9 matches live each week, starting in August, running through May. And then ESPN networks will televise a match of the week in close to 40 per year, and with most coming on ESPN and ESPN2. And then, as they also mentioned, they're going to have highlights and some news coverage about the league throughout the year. And so that starts Saturday, August 18th, which is this upcoming Saturday. And the big deal here is that it's a big league, and the league is also going to be more popular than ever, because I talked about this maybe a month ago or so. Right after the World Cup ended, there was all these rumors that Cristiano Ronaldo was going to leave Real Madrid to go to Juventus, which is in Italy, in Serie A, and that's a publicly traded company. The stock price shot up, and then he actually did end up signing there. So he is playing on Juventus. He is by far the most, not famous soccer player, but the most famous athlete on the planet, and one of the most famous people on the planet. about 140 million people following him on Instagram. He's up there with Selena Gomez and Kim Kardashian as the most followed people on the planet. So he might not be as popular in the States with some people, but he is one of the most famous people walking on the face of the earth right now. So that league is going to be hugely important for ESPN going forward, and ESPN Plus. They could see actually a lot of people sign up for that $4.99 a month to watch soccer. People, I mean, that's really not that expensive if you want to watch these soccer matches, and they're going to have pretty much all of them. And then ESPN Plus is making a soccer push in general. They have a lot of MLS coverage. Interestingly enough, since we record this in Chicago, Zach is based out of Chicago. The Chicago Fire, which it's our hometown MLS team, their exclusive local broadcast rights are on ESPN Plus. The only place you can watch Chicago Fire games is on ESPN Plus. That's through the 2020 MLS season. And so this is ESPN's, what they're trying to do is get soccer is becoming more popular, as we've talked about many times on this show, and streaming is a millennials thing for now, not in general, but cord cutting is a younger person's thing. So those two kind of go hand in hand, and ESPN's slowly trying to make up for not getting the broadcast rights to the Premier League, which ESPN now looks like they kind of got a steal a couple years ago when they landed, when NBC landed those Premier League rights. So going forward, there's going to be a big focus on soccer, and then there's also a big push on esports, which is professional video gaming at ESPN. They landed a deal earlier this summer with Activision Blizzard to broadcast their Overwatch League, which just completed its first season, 12-team league spread across the United States, Europe, Asia. Bob Kraft, who owns the New England Patriots, owns a team, spent upwards of $20 million to own a team in the first league. You had Intel, T-Mobile, HP all sponsoring that league this year. And just for some frame of reference, how big esports is already, it's supposed to hit $906 million on esports alone, so almost $1 billion in 2018. And that's up from under $700 million in 2007, and this is 2017, and that is according to research from Newzoo, who does a lot of video game research, and they think it could get up to 1.5 billion by 2020. So going forward, you'll see a lot more esports, because out of all the sports in the world, even though you might not consider esports a sport, it is widely popular. A billion people play video games. A billion people play soccer, and pretty much nothing else comes close. And then I want to close the episode after talking about ESPN Plus and the future of ESPN with just a little cord cutting roundup. And this all comes from eMarketer, which is a big data research company and market research company. So they predict that in 2018, there will be 33 million cord cutters, or roughly 12% of the U.S. population. And they think by 2022, that number could reach 55 million, or roughly 21% of the population. And these numbers don't even include people who are, at this point, much younger, who maybe are coming out of college and just never getting cable whatsoever. So cord cutting means you had cable, you stopped paying for it, and you're just not paying for it. You had to have had it. So people who combine with cord cutting, and then people who, I think the term you might read somewhere is cord nevers, which is a ridiculous phrase, but that combination is going to be pretty huge going forward, and that is what all of these media companies and all of these television networks are just trying to wrap their heads around. But you still have over 186 million people paying for what they call paid linear television in 2018. So it's not like all of a sudden there's just going to be no one watching paid television, but the numbers are trending in the wrong direction for these companies. But in the long run, ESPN is in a good spot. Disney's in a good spot because people are going to still want to watch live sports, really no matter where it is. But one thing going forward that you're going to probably see a bigger push to stop is to see big companies that have the influence to do it is there's too many people and places that are offering bootleg versions where you could just type in watch Premier League on your computer and you can just watch a streaming stolen version of a game. They don't want that, because then why would you, if you can just type in Cristiano Ronaldo Juventus game Saturday and watch it for free on your computer, you're never going to have to sign up for ESPN Plus. You can do that for pretty much anything. You can do that for NBA games, Monday Night Football, college football on the weekends. So you're going to see, as less and less people are watching this on television, that they're going to really have to do something about these illegal streaming websites that let you watch almost any live sport you'd want to watch at any time. So we'll have to see if they address that going forward, because I haven't really seen any of the companies talk about that. I don't think they want to mention it necessarily, because it might scare off investors or advertisers to say that, well, why would anyone pay for this when you could just Google search these games and watch them for free illegally, albeit. But we could go on about that for seemingly forever. But that does it for another episode of Full Court Finance. I'm sure we're going to have a lot more to talk about in the next couple months with the NFL season kicking back up, and everyone's going to be talking about, are the ratings going to decline again? Because there are billions and billions and billions of dollars pumped in the NFL every year. And then with sports betting starting for the NFL season for the first time legally, there's a lot of fun stuff coming up in the early fall. So make sure you check back in the next couple weeks, in the next couple months, for more on that. But that does it for another episode of Full Court Finance. Until next time, I'm your host, Ben Rains. And remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot us an email over at podcast@zax.com.